Tell me what canine parvovirus is.
Well, it's a very highly transmittable disease that infects canines. It's not something that cats get or people will get, but it can be deadly for dogs. And typically we see it most often in younger animals whose immune systems aren't fully developed yet. Not so much in adults, but they can certainly get it as well. It is highly preventable. Most of the vaccines regimens that dogs will go through will include vaccination against parvo. So if a person's dog is up to date on their vaccinations, they really don't have too much to worry about. But because we've seen a high number of them in the last couple of weeks, and not just from outside Regina but within the city, we felt we wanted to just make people aware that it's out there in a little bit perhaps higher concentration than we normally see this time of year.
How many dogs have you seen be sick here at the Regina Humane Society?
We've seen 11 in the last couple of weeks. One of those was a litter of, I believe, 6 pups with a mom, so that was a higher concentration right there. But we're seeing individuals come in from within the city as well, and normally you don't see as high an instance of it in the winter. So that's why we're a little bit concerned and just want to make people aware that it is out there.
Would you consider this an outbreak?
I'm not sure if I would, do that. I mean, we don't want to panic everybody, but it certainly is a spike from what we would normally see. Typically, it's a little more dormant in the winter. It's something we typically see during the spring and the summer months. It's not something that is unusual for us to see. We do get regular cases of it coming in, but typically it's an individual here and there versus a higher instance in a short period of time. And we've been hearing, just sort of through the grapevine from the vet community that they're seeing a higher instance in the last little bit too.
Why would there be a higher instance? Does anyone know?
Don't know for sure. Some of the animals are coming in from rural areas where you see typically a lesser instance of vaccination. So normally that's where we see it from. But the warmer weather we've had after the cold snap, a lot of animals were out and about. People may not have cleaned up after their animals to the same degree that they might normally. And then we get the thaw, things get a little softer and spread around, and perhaps that's why we're seeing it. We don't know for sure though.
Have you lost dogs to parvovirus?
Yeah, when they come into a shelter environment, it is a disease that is treatable under the right conditions where you've got a high degree of isolation. It's very, very expensive as well. But the typical protocol is that if an animal comes to an animal shelter, that it is euthanized, and that's what we've done in order to protect the other animals in our care. And so animals that we did have in our care that may have been exposed are in isolation right now and will remain that way for about another 9 days, which is the typical incubation period of the virus. And once they're past that, then we should be good to go. But again, we have protocols in place that we regularly implement if we see it, making sure things are clean and sterilized, and that's what we're doing.
So those 11 dogs that came in with canine parvovirus were euthanized?
That's correct.
And what should people think about at home? It does sound pretty scary, the seriousness of this. And you mentioned the vaccinations, and there's also a long period of time where it can be active and a dog can become sick long after perhaps there was a contamination.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it does have a scary side to it, and we don't want to panic everybody. That's not the idea. But it is something that's out there kind of all the time, which is why it's important to keep those vaccinations up to date. It is a virus that can survive sort of out there for a year to 2 years even. So it is something that is difficult to eradicate, and it is out there. But if we keep everyone vaccinated and clean up after ourselves, or not after ourselves, but after the dogs, that'll help keep the instance of it down. So while we don't want to panic everybody, it's not an epidemic type thing, we do want to and feel we have an obligation to let people know that we're seeing a higher instance of it. So make sure those vaccinations are up to date. If you've got the card from your vet that says that Fluffy should be coming in, let's get Fluffy in there so that we don't have to take her in for another reason.
How long will the animals here at the Humane Society be in isolation?
For about 9 or 10 days. It's about a 10-day incubation period for the virus. So once we pass that, and we should be able to get the animals up and out again. And we are still taking animals in. We do have an isolated area that is decontaminated, just to be sure that there's no problems there, and we will be able to take some animals in, and which we do on a regular basis. We do manage our admissions and also diversion. Perhaps if someone wants to surrender an animal, we're working with them to see if they can hang on to it for another week or so until we could make sure that there's much less risk.
And what about adoptions?
For right now, we are going to be slow on adoptions. Again, the animals that we had available for adoption, we want to keep them isolated to ensure that they're okay. If we do get animals in that we can adopt perhaps directly from foster or something like that, we will look at that. But adoptions for dogs will be a little bit slow in the next week or so.
All right, thanks so much for your time.